City Council meeting to order. It is Tuesday, May the 12th, 2020. We are coming to this meeting via Zoom. We are Zooming because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're glad that everyone has joined us. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Roll.
Chairman Clark,
Here. Here.
Councilmember Waldman,
Here.
Councilmember Weil,
Here.
Councilmember Carl,
Here.
Mayor.
Here. Next item.
2, communications. Mayor, we have no written communications this evening.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 3, city manager's report.
Ms. Sondag?
I'll start sharing my screen. 1 second. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. We have quite a bit going on. For some reason, it's not moving for me. I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second and we'll. Here we are. Okay, thank you. So, as everyone is probably now aware, there's going to be probably some additional changes coming on May 18th as St. Louis County begins to lift some of the restrictions that we've had due to the pandemic. The city has been in preparations for quite some time as we move forward. We have been operating with minimal staff in the office. We are slowly will continue to return people to normal hours over the course of the next several weeks. And we have a number of new procedures and policies that will be in place as we continue to bring people back into the workplace. One is the social distancing, in-office traffic patterns, so that we have quite a few more one-way traffic patterns to avoid kind of bumping into each other. We will be doing health screenings at the beginning of the workday. We've changed how we're going to be looking at and talking about vacation requests, an increase of cleaning and disinfecting, and how we use some of our shared equipment and some of our vehicles, and how we are going to deal with some of those common areas and ensuring that we have minimal people in our lunchroom or in conference rooms, those types of things. So those policies are currently there in draft, and they'll be going into place by the end of this week. We are also establishing new policies and procedures for visitors to our facilities. And I want to be clear, we're not opening up at this time, not yet. We want to make sure that we can get staff in, that we identify any issues that we could have. But we will be, but we are in preparation and have policies in place for when we do return. And for instance, our public meetings, we'll have a process by which there's an additional health screening, as well as a security screening for people to come into the chambers. We'll continue to do social distancing in our chambers, utilizing the community rooms if necessary. Court night, we're making a number of changes for how we operate during on courts and how people come in. And I think those will be all for the better. Business meetings, we don't anticipate, most things are still going to be done by appointment. But we have identified, when we do have to have those face-to-face, the appropriate rooms, the appropriate, personal protective wearing, that type of thing. And also kind of a screening process for our visitors as well. All of this is with the goal of keeping everybody safe and healthy. We are making some facility changes with regard to the front desk area. We'll be putting up, that's now an open area. We'll be putting up some plexiglass to reduce the kind of like a buffet sneeze guard. We're looking at doing the same up at the community center, which is a little bit harder because of how it's set up in that office, but we're moving staff about to different places, again, to ensure that we have appropriate distancing for staff and for visitors. We've purchased more cleaning supplies, sanitizer. We have purchased or will be purchasing additional temperature devices to check temperatures. We've instituted a new a form for staff for doing that, so we can monitor that. We will continue to hold public meetings via Zoom, and it says until at least mid-June. And just to be clear, I anticipate we will be utilizing Zoom so that people can continue to participate remotely. And mid-June is kind of a best estimate of when we'll be bringing people probably back in. I know some cities are doing it. They're doing it slowly with bringing only a couple of council members back in, that type of thing. So we'll talk more about that. I anticipate sometime in June we will open up the city hall to the public. The community center is gonna, as it notes here, we'll have a little slower reopening under the guidance of the St. Louis County Public Health guidance, and has to do with the types of things that they do there. Not all of our programming is going to be able to come back in June. And in fact, we continue to wait for guidance from the county and from the CDC on our summer day camp. So we continue to wait for that information to come. So at this point, we are, as everyone else, we are slowly moving towards what our new normal will be. And I anticipate some of these things will continue towards the end, even into the end of the year. I don't have wearing a face mask, those types of things on here, but I guess because that's it's almost become a norm already. With that, there is still quite a bit of work going on. The Centennial
Mark,
Greenway.
before you leave that point, I'll
Yes.
simply point out, you could Zoom within the building. So if you want to have a staff meeting, that sort of thing, you don't have to go to a conference room. You guys could actually Zoom from your offices. I didn't know if you thought of that or
Yep.
not.
No, we have, and actually that's one of the policies is prior to going into another department or prior to going and seeing someone is ask yourself, can I call that type of thing to reduce that. Any other kind of there are some situations that require kind of a group meeting, although even our roll call now, they're doing it via radio. So we continue to make some of those adjustments. Centennial Greenway continues to move forward. We've been meeting kind of weekly with the Great Rivers Greenway, who is heading up this project. Navigate, who is the project manager for our park improvement. also joined us in a conversation with the engineers of the Great Rivers Greenway to ensure that we maintain a good communication between any park improvements and the Centennial Greenway. And I expect we're going to hear more about this in June, which is when I think they anticipate doing a little bit more of their public outreach. Olive Crossing, the Office Max vacated the properties. I believe today was the first day that the Key Properties is now the full owner of that building. This allows for the abatement and demolition to begin, and once that's kind of the last building on that property. And so once that building is down, that allows for the site work to begin. So that continues to be a pretty darn exciting project. Ridge House is the redevelopment at the old City Hall. We anticipate demolition to begin in June. We had initially thought they might be able to demo in May, but a few holdups in getting some of the utilities disconnected, as well as getting the sign up for the abatement, but that will be moving forward. Plant Haven, Easy Storage, and Firestone, all those projects continue to move forward. Easy Storage, it appears, I know that it looks like, wow, nothing's going on, but they actually are. They are continuing to work on that project, but they have a couple of paperwork issues that they're trying to get coordinated to continue to move forward on the site work. And just in case people are wondering, we are continuing to receive requests for residential construction. So our building department and planning department, they're busy, and that is a good sign for us. I want to make sure everyone is aware. I know the city did send out an email to our businesses that have 50 or fewer employees, letting them know about the St. Louis County Small Business Relief Program. Really want to strongly encourage people to apply for this. It's a grant for up to $15,000. And so that's money that you don't have to pay back. And it can go towards costs associated with business interruption and reopening safely. And the building department, community development, and myself, Carlos Trejo, myself, Dave Fairgrave, Jared Kurtz, we are all here and happy to talk with any of the businesses in town that are struggling to figure out how do I reopen, what things do I need. I know we've been doing some outreach. Carlos has been, and his staff have continued to reach out to businesses to see, how we can help. And this is one of the ways for people to get some funds. The deadline to apply is May 17th, which is a Sunday. And so again, we'll be putting out a push to our businesses to try. If you don't know if you qualify, apply, answer all the questions honestly, look and make sure you meet the qualifications. They're pretty clearly stated, and then just apply. Run for the Front Line, our virtual, that's a run, walk, and bike. We've added biking to this. So we're still taking registrations. It's $10 for a participant. That money goes towards the purchase of food for our healthcare heroes working at Barnes Jewish West County Hospital. There's also the opportunity to get a $10 gift card from New Balance, and so it's free to register. It's for a good cause, and really encouraging people to sign up. Again, all you do, you sign up. You then choose your route. You run, walk, or bike it, and then you record it in your own Run for the Front page website. And so it's really easy. Our friends at Big River Running Management have made this a pretty easy process. So again, encourage people to participate in that. Reminding people that our virtual community center is still open. They're adding different things to it each day. So if you need some ideas for what to do with the kiddos as they're still home, this is a good place, good resource for you to go to. Prop C, there is a vote coming up on June 2nd, an election, and Prop C, creating community through people, parks, and programs, will be on the ballot. And so we are encouraging folks to learn more about it, either online or by attending one of the many community forums that we'll be holding via Zoom. I'm just going to bring these all up because they're a little out of order. So we have our next community forum for Prop C is May 14th at 7 p.m. And then we have one in the morning on May 19th at 8:45 a.m. Park and Rec Commission is meeting May 20th at 7 p.m. The Planning and Community Design Commission will be meeting May 21st at 7 p.m. Next regular City Council meeting will be May 26th at 7 p.m. And then we have a community forum for Prop C on May 28th at 7 p.m. On June 1st, we do have a question and answer session, which is just going to be a kind of an open dialogue if people want to call in, and that's from 6 to 8. And then we have Election Day on June 2nd. Please check the city website for the links for all of these, all of the things that we're doing here today. All these meetings and forums are available via Zoom, and we will be taking questions, either written or spoken. And with that, I am. Oops, 1 second.
Barb?
I am done. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just going to say on that topic, not to interrupt the questions you're going to get, but do you want to talk about absentee ballots? I think we're going to get a lot of people vote that way, and to be sure you have it in time to get your ballot back.
Excuse me. I fell.
Item number,
No, he asked me a question. Sorry.
sorry.
Yeah,
Didn't mean to knock you off your chair with that question.
Exactly. So we do have, people are still able to vote absentee. A lot of the St. Louis Election Board did send out instructions and the forms to request an absentee or a mail-in ballot. If you haven't if you've received one, all you need to do, you complete that form, you can fax it, you can email it, you can mail it back in. It does need to be back into the Board of Elections by May 20th. And just being 60 years old or older does allow you to vote by absentee. So again, we encourage people, if you do not want to be at the polls on June 2nd, but you still want to exercise your privilege of voting, absentee ballot is really the way to go. If you would have any questions about that, you can easily go. I'll make sure we have a link to the county Board of Election, and you can get all that information there.
Are there any other questions for the city manager? Okay, I just have one request for all of you. If you do start to get inquiries from business owners regarding the small business relief, I would ask please that they be directed to me so that the city can speak with one voice, as has been our practice in the past. So just forward them on to me and we'll see what they're asking about. Thanks. Next item.
Item number 4, City Council reports.
I will start with Councilmember Carl. I'm sorry?
I attended the last Economic Development Commission meeting via Zoom. And Obviously, it was the first meeting we had since the pandemic really started. And so obviously a lot of things have changed. What had been discussed originally was some kind of initiative to make contact with our businesses where we went out and talked to them. Under COVID-19, that is obviously not going to happen right now. But they did come up with the idea of contacting local businesses and offering to help with various things. For instance, one of the members, David Moons, is a local small businessman, and he, has gone through these processes, and he said, this would be a good way for the city to try to assist business and obviously it's already in process, as Barb has said. So, but that was really the gist of the meeting. And then, trying to plan at this point when other things can recontinue is hard. So that's my report. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. Hearing none, no questions. Councilmember Weil.
I have only been to our council meetings.
Okay. Councilmember Waldman.
I have the Planning Community Design Commission next week. Nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Chairman Pro Tem Clark.
I did not attend any meetings other than our council meetings.
Okay, thank you. I attended the pension board meeting. Pension board has met more in the last 3-4 weeks than we've met probably in the last 2 years. But things have seemed to stabilize, especially with regard to the cushion. The cushion has been around about $500,000 to a little bit between 500 and 600,000. That's made us all feel a lot more comfortable and a lot happier now. The plan actually had a great year last year. It had a spectacular year last year, as a matter of fact. The actuary always does a 7.25% assumption on our returns. Last year, we actually had 19.51% on the returns. At the end of December, the valuation of the pension plan was $22.3 million. Today, it sits between $18 and $19 million. So obviously, we've taken a hit, but it has not been the same type of hit that we had in 2008. And we are watching it very closely, being very diligent about ensuring that the pension funds are where they need to be and performing in the way they need to be. And most importantly, that we're keeping a really close eye on the cushion. Today, does anybody have any questions about the pension? I would like to try to get Brian Gooding, City Manager Sondag, to meet with the council. If not in June, then maybe if we're all together in July, so that we can go over all of these things. What is the cushion? What is the benefit index? What are all of those mystical, magical numbers, so that we can all know what they mean when we say them. So let's figure that out and see what'll work. And as I said, I think it's best to do it when we're all together, but if we could do a Zoom meeting, it probably would be okay too. Today I had two conversations rather, one with Council Member Kelly Hathaway. She represents the third district, is it? I think she's a 3rd district, and Lisa Clancy's a 5th district.
Fifth.
5th district.
One is 2nd, one is 5th. Yes.
Yeah. So she represents the 5th district, which is properties north of Olive, and it was a very interesting meeting. I think that this small business relief program is going to move fairly quickly along. As the city manager said, on the 17th, the application process will close. We're encouraging people who have not not already applied to do so before that time and date. I know there's been a lot of talk about the fact that people need a letter from me in their application process. That is, there's no place, first of all, to upload such a letter. And there's no place for that letter to be taken in by the county. So that is not going to be, that is not part of the process and never was meant to be part of the process. There will be a point at which, as the mayor, I will recommend. I don't exactly know how all that's going to work yet. They haven't, procedurally, they haven't figured it all out yet. But they are having conversations with all of us, and that's a really good thing that they're inviting us into that conversation so that we can be a part of that and that we can advocate for our cities. I had the same conversation, the city manager and I spoke with Lisa Clancy this afternoon. We had the same, pretty much the same conversation with her about the south side of Olive. You know, that encompasses a whole different group of cities into that district, but you know, they're reaching out to the mayors of all these cities and to the Chamber of Commerce in these cities to see how they can give input as to the distribution of the money. So that was basically the conversation. Does anyone have any questions about that?
They did encourage us to make sure that we got the word out to as many businesses as possible,
Yes,
so that we didn't miss out on our share.
correct.
It'd be a shame to let all that money go to waste.
Yeah.
And not get our piece.
I have a question.
Sure.
If someone got a PPP, can they still apply for it in the county?
Yes.
Yes. That was
You
one of
can.
the questions I asked about as well. If you've gotten it already, it's not going to weigh anything against you.
The one has nothing to do with the other.
No, but they didn't give me clarity on if you were already applying for PPP and you didn't get it yet, if it would have any kind of adverse effect on your application to get PPP.
Mhm.
They couldn't answer that question.
Well, it's two very different jurisdictions, so.
Right, I understand that.
One of the other things to, when you look at that question, it asks if you've received funding through the CARES. And if you have just applied for it,
Mhm.
you haven't received it.
And you have to say no.
So your answer would be no. Yeah.
Right. But if you've applied and received, then the answer
Then
is
your
yes.
answer is yes. If you've
But-
received it, it's yes. If you've
It doesn't preclude you from receiving this money. Again, you know, they're going to evaluate these applications and through a process, and they want it to be as fair and transparent as possible. And, you know, I think they're still feeling their way through that. But if people have gotten PPP, they should apply. The one thing that I want to stress is there is no letter coming from me with your application. That's a different part of the process, and it doesn't involve a letter necessarily from me, to my knowledge. But again, everybody's feeling their way through this process. But your application cannot take a letter and does not require a letter from me.
And I would add, Mayor, that I applaud the county for attempting to make this process really simple
Mhm.
and quick. I mean, this is, they've moved really quickly on this. And so we probably along the way will have a couple stumbles, but that's just to be expected. But I don't want those to outshine the fact that the good that this program has and can have, the benefit it can have for the folks who apply. And it is a very simple application.
Agreed. Any other questions? Okay. Let's move on. Next item.
Item number 5, hearing from citizens.
I do not see any questions in the queue. Are there any citizens who wish to make comments?
At this point, Mayor, I see no written comments, chats, or hands raised.
Me neither. I'll give them another 10 seconds and then we are going to move on. All righty, next item.
Item number 6, proclamation recognizing May 2020 as Building Safety Month.
Who's going to do this for us?
I have Carlos Trejo is on the line, and I believe he is, there he
He's
is.
on our screen. He's appeared.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll be glad to read. May is designated by the International Code Council as Building Safety Month, and given situations today, it is a very important and integral part of our lives as we've seen through this pandemic. I would like to read the proclamation, if that's okay, Mayor.
Absolutely.
And if I can ask you just to chime in that last sentence, and that is where the recognition takes place. But
Okay.
whereas the City of Olivet is committed to recognize that our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of the homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster. Whereas confidence in the structural integrity of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others of the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas building safety and fire prevention officials of the City of Olivet are dedicated members of the International Code Council, a nonprofit that brings together local, state, and federal officials that are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. And whereas our nation benefits economically and technologically from the using of the international codes that are developed by National Voluntary Consensus Codes and Standards Developing Organization, our city, Olivet, is able to avoid the high cost and complexity of developing and maintaining these codes, which are the most widely adopted building safety and fire prevention codes in the world. And whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as snowstorms, tornadoes, wildfires, floods, and earthquakes, which, according to a FEMA Commission study by the National Institute of Building Services, provides $11 in future mitigation benefits for every dollar invested. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown local code officials who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings that are essential to America's prosperity. And whereas safer buildings, safer communities, safer world, the theme for the Building Safety Month 2020 encourages all Americans to raise awareness about the importance of safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, and new technologies in the construction industry. Building Safety Month 2020 encourages appropriate steps everyone can take to ensure the safety of our built environment and recognize that the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies has saved lives and protected homes and businesses. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider the commitment to improving building safety and economic investment at home and in their community, and to acknowledge the essential services provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore,
Oh, go ahead.
Mayor,
Now therefore, I, Mayor Ruth Springer of the City of Olivet, Missouri, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2020 as Building Safety Month. Accordingly, I encourage our citizens to recognize the local building safety and fire prevention officials and the important role they play in public safety.
thank you, Mayor.
Yay. Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
Well earned.
the,
Well earned.
the building department in all of that has really grown over the last several years, and the work that they're doing is really evolving. And what it's done, it's also allowed Carlos, as the head of that department, to really look more, spend more of his time looking and planning for the future, which better serves us all, I think. So good work.
Yeah, well done. Well done. All right. Do we need do we need nothing?
Nope, it's just a proclamation, Mayor.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
on that. Unless
Any comments?
anyone wants to speak against it.
All right. Next item, please.
Sorry. Oh, I just lost the meeting. Hold on a second. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Item number 7, resolution number 2020-186, a resolution requesting that municipalities in St. Louis County receive equitable distribution of CARES Act funding received by St. Louis County.
Thank you. I will take this. As the council is aware, the St. Louis County received $175 million from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, through the U.S. Treasury. And that money comes with pretty strict guidelines on how it can be spent, what it can be spent on, as it should. The U.S. Treasury issued guidelines for the use of that fund. They updated the guidelines for that, and it includes payroll expenses for public safety. That may be presume the cost for dedication to mitigating and responding to COVID-19. Working along the St. Louis Area City Managers Association, working with the St. Louis Area Metro League of St. Louis Area, worked together to draft a resolution which cities will be presenting then, if passed, will be presenting to the county executive. As you're also probably aware, the county council has granted Sam Page, as the county exec, the responsibility and the authority to spend those funds where he sees available and where he sees that need. So with that, what we have is the resolution that identifies, kind of the how we got here, where we got here, or how we got here, and what exactly the cities or municipalities in St. Louis County are asking of the county exec. Now, when I put this to print, when I went to print on the agenda, I didn't have the final numbers for the, just grabbing that now. For the, let me see, 1 second, payroll costs with the benefits. But I do have those now, and I apologize, I should have had that in there. The total will be, let me just add it up real quick because we have it in both. The total would be $243,040, and that would be the amount that we would place in there. I will be breaking that down by salary, by benefits and salaries, but that's the total. With that, I am happy to answer any questions that the council may have. I know this is a resolution that's on the agenda of at least 4 other cities over the next couple of days. So people are taking action, and then there are other cities that will be taking it up next week.
Are there any questions?
What is this resolution number again? I'm sorry, I don't have my agenda in front of me.
2020-186.
Can you put the motion on the screen?
If I don't have any other questions, so, okay, as long as everybody understands this versus the small business, there are obviously two different pools of money that are coming out. This one specifically to help municipalities, and the other specifically to help small business. If there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-186, a resolution requesting that municipalities within St. Louis County receive an equitable distribution of the 175 million in funding received by St. Louis County for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act to reimburse municipalities for actual public safety costs incurred related to COVID-19.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additional comments or questions from the council?
If I may add, Mayor, I don't know if I made this clear. It is the county exec who has the authority to make the decision whether or not to grant this. And so there will be a meeting between the members of the municipal league. They have asked a member of the St. Louis Area City Managers Association might sit in on that meeting to talk with the county exec about this. And the county executive also was given a letter that let him know that these would be coming. So these aren't just blindsiding anyone.
Who gave that letter? Where did that come from? The municipal league to?
Like,
Okay, thank you. Okay.
No, if there are no other comments or questions, I will please poll the council.
Councilmember Weil?
Yes.
I didn't hear.
She said yes.
Councilmember Carl?
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman?
Yes.
Chairman Clark?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 8, discussion fiscal year 21 draft budget.
Mayor, with this, I'm going to turn it over to Darren Mann, our finance director, and he's going to take over the screen.
Okay. Darren, you're muted. Darren, you're muted.
Thank you. I realize it. Too late. Now I can't find the button. When I share, it looks different. So I
It's all good.
find my other side. We're okay. How's everyone doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. In the past week, we've had a few developments. Not the least was the implementation, or the we've changed our budget figures to include some of the items we talked about last week. So first, just that general fund update. We can see this number right here. It runs at a deficit of $322,000, and this would be about $70,000 lower than what we talked about earlier. I said it was last Tuesday, wasn't it? And so a couple things there again is reduction in expenditures based on what some of the things that were talked about last week, and then we did have a revised some revenues based on what we were seeing for the collections for May. Mostly the revenue collections there are property taxes. And so one of the things we do kind of know about were the 2020 is a non-reassessment year, so we can expect the sales tax collections to be roughly what they are this year. Even the properties of the assessments have been set for the most part. Now, again, the protest, which is what came in, we were notified of the amounts today, and that's what kind of bumped these numbers up. What does that look like? We don't know. But the collections are expected to be right at where they were last year. The other thing that happened is we did get our May sales tax collection in the general fund, and this number right here, which is the projected excess or deficit for this year, FY20, also it decreased to 180,000. So every dollar we get in here or here increases this fund balance, which is where the number we're kind of fighting with right now under that 5-year projection to be at 75%. One of some of the metrics we created last year or last week to look at was, what percent of revenue, and here they are now. They've updated. It's 4.8% of FY21's revenue come in. That was the number that was 5% last week. So with that, do we have any more questions on the general fund? We spent a lot of time on it last week, and I won't spend much more time than that on it this week unless we would like to address that right now.
So Darren, my question would be, if we receive any of these funds, or they're one program or the other, whatever, do they go in and become revenue in the general fund, or how are we going to record that?
I don't know what, I've not talked about this with Barb very much. We did receive, as a matter of fact, some of the first set of funding we did receive, because we're an ambulance provider, a healthcare provider, we did receive some money. It's about 5,056, another round I think came in, but $6,000 total. That has some restrictions on spending, and so that falls under, to me, a category of a grant. We get it for a reason, and we have to spend that reason for it. And so that would have lived right in here. Now, a bunch of zeros in there, right? This is a fund we set up, I think, in FY15 to be a zero base, a zero fund balance. The fund balance itself is set to be zero every year. We see some activity here for FY21 is predicted, and that's the federal reimbursement for the northern part of the Dealman Road reconstruction. We're finishing up the south side right now, but the north side is set to begin in the next year. I'll skip ahead to, we will be talking about each of these funds. I'll get into that grant a little bit more right now.
Again,
most of these things are capital improvement stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question would be, so when we get in the grant fund though, and then say it's for police salaries, it'll get transferred to the general fund then, right?
The expenditures that essentially get transferred the other way, but it's the same line of thought. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So will we see this number, our projected deficit, go down if we receive monies in grants or whatever then?
Now that is a lot of times these grants, and we're not clear on the language. It's all being formulated. We know from the Treasury what that means, but we don't really know what from the granting agency itself, which is the county, what that means. Usually when you get these grants, it's for things that are not budgeted otherwise. Now that could be a little different in this case. What I would expect to see, if what you're, the scenario we're playing out right now, is we would see a decrease in our police department budgeted expenditures. And then those expenditures would end up in the grants fund.
Okay. So then that would have an effect on the deficit.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it has the same effect. It would just kind of where you see it would be in a different place.
I just wanted to make sure I was thinking about it correctly. Thank you.
Sure. Very good question. Yep. So do we have any more questions, or anybody else have anything that they would like to make sure we talk about or see? Nope. Okay. The capital improvement fund, which would be the next line right down here, would be the focus of a lot of this discussion tonight. I'll introduce it a little here. Again, for FY20, which is the year we're in now and approaching the end, we're projecting a negative $8,000 deficit, and that is more than anything. The sales taxes didn't pan out like as you'd expect toward the end of the year. And then for this next year, it's projected to be a negative 260,500. We'll talk about some more of why that is and what that is here in a little bit, but I just did want to introduce it here. This is better illustrated more than anything because of the other sheets we use for our CIP, which is our capital improvement program. The next line then is stormwater parks, and that is the old Fund 30. It is projected for a negative 135,347 for this year. It was actually budgeted at a deficit of 59,000. A lot of this is there's just a couple items in there that kind of do that, and they're capital related. One of them is $75,000 for parking lot repair at Safety Park in the community center, and then another 100,000 is what's for the work for the parks master plan implementation. It's the design fees that with KAI and with Navigate. And then I think those are the main ones inside of there. So that fund, though, if we look toward FY21, is projected with a surplus at 37,800. That is on lower sales taxes and the removal of those capital items. There's very little capital related things inside of the Stormwater Parks Fund for the FY21 budget as it stands right now. We'll get I will say, when we look down here, we'll talk about what that means in stormwater parks, why are those gone, what that means here in just a couple minutes. Fire operations, though, if we remember this one, just 5 short years ago, this had a negative $15,000 fund balance. We fought hard to build that back up. One of the biggest things I think benefiting this budget and the future, all of our planning documents that we're looking at, is moving those 3 firemen from the fire operations fund up into the general fund. If we think back a year, think about the mechanics of what happens when we do that is we freed it up for capital purchases, and we're going to look at the chart of what that means for the future. But I think one of the mechanics of this it's almost a worst case scenario for those mechanics because the general fund now has another $230,000 in costs and expenditures right when we're trying to get this reserve policy 5 years down the road. If that hadn't happened, the reserve policy's in great shape, but we still wouldn't have been better off. So that's kind of a positive. This budget has really benefited from moving those operations out. So thank you to the people here that pushed us and supported that when we did that. That's good. It does show a $93,000 surplus that includes a couple things again we'll talk about later, which is kind of paying for that the debt on that fire truck. We talked about the grants fund. That next line, the public safety fund, is the Prop P money. That is projecting a surplus at 267.5 this year. It does have a projected for a deficit next year, and that's because that represents the self-funding of the debt for the fire truck at $750,000. We take that $750,000 away, you can see the numbers pretty small. We do come up with an ended projected fund balance at the end of next year, the end of FY21. You can see it's quite a bit lower there, and we'll look at the chart or the tables here, what that looks like to see if that's what we got. This is one of our things, like if we have options, which again, that's another of the third main point I think if we could go over tonight. The debt service, and go ahead.
Darren, just for my own clarity and recollection, so the Prop P money that goes for public safety, that's the money that's going to pay for the fire truck?
That will not pay for the fire truck. It will provide the cash up front in a debt situation, if you will.
Okay.
And it'll be repaid through that fire operations fund over a course of 7 years. Fully paid,
Okay.
so not paid for, just using the cash on a temporary basis.
Okay, thanks, Darren.
No interest, yep. The debt service construction has been renamed. It was the new facility fund, but now with the addition of more general obligation debt inside of there, it will become again a construction account. And this is This budget is an assumption for the bond passage in June. We were really hoping that we would know more about that, what this budget would shake out like with the vote supposed to be happening in April, but it didn't. And so this is what a full bond issue looks like. It comes in at the full 16.1. There's also debt service levy on top of that comes in, and then there's some expenditures there. The expenditures are for the debt itself, and also there's $1 million built into here of the beginning process of that park master plan and community center construction. And so what would happen here, we see a huge increase of surplus because of the influx of that debt, and then this would gradually dwindle down to just the debt service payment, more like what it looks like right in here with $1 million roughly, which is we're projecting $262,000 positive for this year. And again, that's about 2 years worth of our payments, which we'd expect as we've triggered the reduction in that debt service, which creates the no tax increase, or the reduced tax increase bond issue that we've been talking about with Prop C. The pension operations as normal, again, a non-reassessment year, and it's funded through property taxes. Fund balances remain about the same with the deficits or in expenditure revenues, all about the same as where they were last year. This does include forwarding $567,000 to the pension trust, which is a little bit higher than it was last year. And as these revenue numbers increase, you'd expect that the amounts forwarded to the trust to continue to increase.
Aaron?
Yeah.
Have you made a transfer to the pension fund recently? I know it's supposed to happen soon, but I don't remember.
No, usually, we usually do those at the very last of December, and the very last after we receive the payment from the county for property tax collections in June.
Okay.
The big one that makes we could do it in May. The lion's share of what we got, again, in the next couple of days, we know the amount is in those protested funds. When they get released, that's about half of that amount we forward on in June. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The
Darren,
sewer lateral. Yeah, go ahead.
Darren, I thought the protests were released today.
I think they were released to the county today, or they're in the process of getting them. And that's what that amount that you sent me was perfect. That's about all I need, but we didn't get the actual funny.
Okay.
The funds in the bank today.
Okay.
Yep. Sewer lateral fund, again, operations as normal. I can see the fund balance grows just slightly to 713, almost 714,000. Dealman NID, North Price NID, these are both debt service payments. These are collected. These are the debt that goes on the part of the city that we talked about at one of the meetings a couple of weeks ago. But these are collected from the property owners inside of the district on Dealman Industrial Drive, and this one on North Price Road. And then they're sent away for payments. You can see roughly here in these fund balances about 1 year's worth of debt service, and those are designed into the bond documents where they go. The Dealman NID, this did come up. The Dealman NID, we owe $570,000 on this piece of debt, and then $1.5 million on North Price and North Price NID. I didn't mention it up here, but in the city center, which is the debt for the city center, is called the 2014 GO or general obligation bonds. The outstanding balance is $12.4 million. Then coming down to the end here, the Gateway TIF, which is the TIF fund, and that has a small increment on the property tax side, and that it came in around $9,000, I think, this year. The only costs inside of here are the administrative fees that are charged per the redevelopment agreement, and those go into the general fund.
Why do
So,
we have? Oh, never mind. That's at the end of the fiscal year 2021. I'm seeing a negative on TIF. Okay, never mind.
Oh yeah, there is a deficit projected for this year. That's just because I'm not sure what the increment will be for that year. It was higher this year, higher than 5,000, but it would. Yep, we did show the deficit for that year. The escrow trust fund is just the interest earnings on the money inside of the escrow. And so that gets transferred to the general fund because it's a zero balance, a liability only that we're holding in trust. So does anybody have any questions on this sheet? This sheet is in the budget if anyone's curious about what it looked like last year. The budget document, I should say. And this has the expenditures, revenues for all. We can get into anything if we need to about what these things look like. I see only 2 people are asleep, so I did pretty good compared to usual. We have 2 more points, so buddy, give it a good slap. So if there's no more questions, I'll move over to the next sheet, which is our CIP, which is capital improvement sheet. We'll be looking at right here the capital improvement fund, the parks, stormwater fund, fire operations fund, and the public safety fund when we look at this right here. And so 265,500 sitting right here. That's the projected excess or deficit for FY21. And there we see that number right here again. FY21, it kind of shifts under the column. And the taxes are sitting all there. Let me see what my notes say. What do we do here? We see FY20 where we think it's going to end up, and this is designed to show us in a 10-year FY22 to FY30, a 10-year span of our projected or anticipated purchases for capital items, and it includes the street operations department because it is in that fund. And what's the idea of this is to make sure that we're we can afford what we want to afford, and you guys and the public can look and see where the direction of the city heads. We have 5 years on our operating, and then 10 years sitting out here. And what this does is it allows us. What it does is it doesn't help us anymore to push things out a year, because we still got to pay for it some year, still got to pay for it somewhere, and so if you push it out this year, yeah, we get this number in a good shape. But what does it look like? These fund balances toward the end, all the way out 10 years. And you can see it goes down here. It actually is positive this year again. And if we remember, just a couple of years ago, we didn't really have many of these funding sources to even use, and it was it was not it was not a viable plan, and we had to make adjustments as that focus narrowed in toward the current fiscal year. The addition of those extra funding sources that I was talking about are not in the stormwater parks, but in the fire operations fund. Fire operations fund, again, by moving those firefighters out, we have the fire operations fund to allow to pay for capital and debt service if that may be or would be required. And then the public safety fund, the Prop P funding, also provided a great way or a great tool for us to use to pay for capital improvements in the police department. And so here's the 750 we see kind of going out, and if we total these across, this number right here, we can see the, did I lose one? I did. Yeah, see the 750. We'll get there. Got shorted it. Okay. There, we can see all this there and what it looks like. Now, while I look, first from there, we'll go to the expenditures themselves. And, I lied. This is all a bunch of numbers. It really is tough without looking at it a long time. It takes me a couple weeks to kind of get back my head really into this. If I don't pay attention to it, it really loses. I can lose it. But if we look at it in a graph form, we can kind of see what this does. In the background right back there, that is the fund balance. So that's the money in our bank. We see expenditures, or sorry, revenues on the left, the lighter green. Darker green is the expenditures for the certain year. So FY21, look at there, we see that deficit. That's what it looks like on a zero base scale to 2.5 million. And we see these other blips. What would be in there. You can kind of see it gives it a different picture than what we see when we look at it just like this. Nobody noticed that, we see that jumped a little bit, but what does that look like compared to these other years? And when you look at it, here's the big numbers, and I know it's really small. But this is also, and it has its own kind of plan that we adopt every year. But we were able to look and say FY25, remember, FY25 right here, what happened? What's going on? This would be a good way to go and look and see who it is, because we have another fire truck planned in FY25. Okay. So in that capital improvement plan, we can see that there had a positive fund balance. If we were to total any of these years for fire department, and here's the items here, we'll go over the FY21 items, this and kind of what you can either digest it and of what all these things are, or you can listen or do both at the same time. The amount on the fire truck, we had appropriated $750,000 this year. We won't be spending the cash out in that, so we have a zero for FY20. We do know the amounts of the fire truck. We needed the appropriations to sign a contract, which will hopefully happen by the end of the year. And then in FY21, we have the amount appropriated, which with its delivery, which is expected to be, I mean, it's going to be really tight to even get it even in next year, FY21. But the other things that would be part of a budget presentation or asking for appropriations in a month's time or so would be the full amount for the fire truck, that pumper, 3 sets of structural firefighting gear as part of this bigger plan we can see here as it goes across many years. Starting of the replacement of the SCBA's. If you may or may not remember, about 5 years ago, we got a grant for a full replacement of the SCBA's, and that, if we total this across, runs about $111,000. That wasn't something we wanted to put all in one year, so we've begun to spread them out over a course of 3.5 years to 4 years to get those final ones in there. And then the other thing that is new added this year, maybe last year, is the high pressure lift bags. The ones we have are 10 to 15 years old, and the newer ones are much more powerful, more durable than the older ones. And those are the things, if a vehicle tips over, you can slide these bags underneath there, and like the bounce house is like a bounce house, and it expands and tips over. It's a much safer way than using a tow truck. That's just the use that I know of, and there may be many, many more.
You can use that over and over again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if you're nice to them, and they are pretty tough.
Okay.
And then, so if this is the fire department, and then we moved on to the police department. This is the replacement of patrol vehicles. This is actually for the replacement of administrative vehicles. For the two, we have two for both of the chief's vehicles, and then full replacement of all the patrol laptops. They use ultra durable, and they're Panasonic Toughbooks, and they're expensive. And so we have, in the past, we'd replace those over a course of 2 years. This is switched to just 1 year, all at once. And then we'll move on from there. Police, you can see not much activity inside of there. But Public Works, it's going to be a bigger year for the Public Works kind of like department, if you will, with the completion of the Dillman Road North project. And these are figures that we had to have with the bid opening, that it was a little bit above where we thought it was going to be. So this number's changed from what it would have looked like last year. And then street repairs here are down to $100,000. They were previously a little higher as the sales tax numbers kind of went down and projects out. We also get that same thing happening to those street repairs. And then the completion of the salt enclosure. There's a little bit of cost coming at 15 this year, and then the rest of it will be up next year. So when we look at that, I would first ask, there is one thing in the Stormwater Parks Fund down here in the green. There are some ball field maintenance tools that are projected there, and that's a little bit for next year. But at this point, still a pretty bare capital plan for that Stormwater Parks. It's still unclear until a vote what this looks like, and with the improvements that would happen with With the bond passage, it's likely that the operations would be more expensive, and the capital would then, or at least for those several years during implementation, would rest actually in the construction account, not here in the stormwater parks fund. So I was going to stop here and make sure in FY21 that there was no questions or concerns, or, I thought this was going to be here, what happened here, to anything, because these would be the ones that we're doing the appropriation for in a month's time. The rest of these are not being appropriated now. It's just a plan.
Scroll that down, put that black line back on there and scroll that down just a little further.
Sure.
So I can see the bottom of the screen, or the final numbers.
Oh, right here?
Where'd your black little thing go for everything? Okay. Okay.
The other, these administrative, what we do see in here, some of the city center, the replacement costs are coming in. And that's something that we've been asked several times, to do. And it's not something we should be ignoring at all, because we don't want to run into a deferred maintenance kind of issue. So those are in here.
Thanks, Darren.
That's good that those things are in there for the city center, because it's really, really important that we take good care of this building, and it will take good care of us for a long time. But, if we try to do it all at, one time, it would be overwhelming in terms of the cost. And it wouldn't, we wouldn't be able to do it. So it's best that we keep the building up over time. And especially technology that seems to be, in there, and those are all good things.
Great. Before I guess the next and the final kind of point I'll say here is these, if we follow this through in any given year, 25, 26, FY21, these funds right here, except for the pumper is paid for with a debt mechanism, and we're going to talk about what that means in a little bit. The Prop P money is providing the debt mechanism right now. It's self-funded through another funding source, and then repaid. The debt repayment and all the capital, all of this right here is paid for through the Fire Operations Fund. All of this right here, including the $750 self-funded for the pumper, that debt is all paid for with Prop P funding. Okay. The Public Works amounts in purple here and yellow here. And mostly if we look at these numbers right here, the focus right here is the deficit that's happening in the capital improvement fund is happening right here. It's not because we bought a fire truck. It's not because we bought patrol vehicles or replaced vehicle laptops right now, because this is all funded through another funding source. And so that's an important piece, because these are the reason that these deficits kind of happen. The reason that this graph goes behind right here in the capital improvement fund is because of these projects that we're doing right in here. And you can see they're big projects. The North Price Road phase 1 coming out here in FY24. And then the other side, another phasing of North Price Road in FY26 at $200,000. Just these reconstructions right here, run us in $810,000. Now, at the same time, these are not, these are the matching portions of the grants. These aren't the full cost of what each one of these individual projects runs in the neighborhood of $1 million a piece, or well beyond our capability to pay for ourselves. And so it's an important piece that we're using the fund balance as a leverage piece to get
Aaron,
grant
can I ask
funding.
a question?
Absolutely.
You said the pumper is being paid for with a debt mechanism.
Uh-huh.
I've never heard of that term before. What is a debt mechanism?
A debt mechanism. So there's lots of different ways to get debt on yourself. You can borrow from your folks, or you can borrow from some family member. You can go lease it from lease it from another company. You know, it's a debt. You don't have to pay for the whole thing. You got to pay for some of it. And then the promise there is you get it back or you do it. And we do that. It's called a lease purchase agreement. We've done that before. And then you can go to an open market, and that's like you know what I would do. I go to the car dealer, and they ask, how are you going to do this? Am I going to borrow from your folks? Are you gonna lease this thing, or do you want some debt? And they call it Bank of America, or your credit card company. Not your credit card, because that's another debt mechanism. You can issue. You got $30,000 debt limit. You can put that on your credit card, and I'm sure people do it. But and that's a high. So every one of those has different interest rates. You know, the lease obviously has a different thing because you're giving it back to them at the end of that term. But we do is a lease purchase, which is it's I guess a fancy term for debt, but usually has a shorter term, and it doesn't have to go through the same kind of like signature things. And you know, we do that too. And what we would do, we're asking the Prop P fund, or we're asking you to borrow money from the Prop P fund, that public safety fund. Other things we would do if we get uncomfortable with the amount that shows up is we do, which by the way, we haven't done, we've moved on to the fire truck discussion. I skipped us ahead. But yeah, it's a great question.
So like, if I'm the understanding is right, like my son wanted a new car and his debt mechanism would be me.
Yeah.
That's right. And did you charge him interest?
I wish I could.
Right, that's right. Well, and I wish I could. That's exactly the same words that we use for self-funded debt. And it can be done. And we could make the fire operations fund pay interest to the public safety fund to do that. But you're right. And it's kind of, I wish. It's just, you know, we're not going to do it. The other thing, the other kind is a lease purchase. There's some debt. We would ask you again if that's the way we want to go. We would bring a resolution back to the council to do that. And it costs money. There's interest involved with it. Other kinds that, you know, again, we personally could do is you go to the lease purchase is just like us going to the auto dealer and signing a bunch of forms. There's there's regulations that attach to it. There's the titling and the lien holders and all this stuff. But nothing we haven't done before and not a big deal. There's costs associated with it. That's important. Yeah.
Thanks. I didn't want for us to digress too far off of where we were, but
no, you led us right into the next piece as long as everybody was okay with where we were at with FY21, all these purchases, and the fact that I'm going to go back to the summary, that this, the transfers in right here, and you can see the cells of what they do, are for FY21, they come from the fire operations fund right here. This and this and this all added together, and FY21 is a little bit of a mess because of that debt and the debt repayment, and so it makes it a little bit harder to follow because of where the numbers come in. But if we were to go even further out here after this loan is repaid to FY28. So transfers for capital, public safety, 97,000. Transfers for capital, fire operations, 117,000. That total there is 214,200. Let's go up to the top right here for our transfers in our capital improvement fund. Right there, 214,2, and then we have 414,2. Oh nope, the transfers in and out in that. We got that, and that. Yeah. Oh, there we go. So there's the other piece of that. But they're all right here. The sewer lateral fund. We have always transferred money for operating the administration of the sewer lateral fund out of the sewer lateral fund, and that's for the cost of running the program. That's the other piece of that. That's why it didn't total the 214, is because that money comes in from the sewer lateral fund, which the Public Works Department is the administrator of all the time that goes in, and it also pays for half of our code enforcement officer, Paul Luft, the new code enforcement officer there. So again, we add up the capital with that transfer.
Darren,
Yeah, we get the 266 too.
if
There.
if I understand this correctly, so that I'm maybe
Mhm.
oversimplifying this, we borrowed money from the public safety fund to purchase the pumper truck.
Uh-huh.
Is So, and then the fire operations fund is paying back.
Right. And let's go look at that while we're here. Again, that's what we caught there. There was a little mismatch in that. But see, this totals is 750. This is fire operations fund. This is money going out. We have our capital items, which is the total of all those things in the red on the expense, all over here. And we have that money essentially transfers up to here, transfers in right here. And then the capital improvement fund turns around and transfers it back out to the public safety fund, money coming back in. Now, why would you show that? You know, in that kind of, it's a little bizarre at first, but there's two reasons for that. One, this funding source could dry up. This funding source could dry up, and if we understand the mechanisms and are okay with the mechanisms of the transfers and why they happen, this capital improvement fund is your one-stop shop. All the purchases happen here. There's no hidden purchase coming from another place or in another area. This is the only place we're buying stuff from the capital improvement fund. Now, in this, there's a lot of debate, you know, internally for me of the easiest way to show it, because this is a little bit more confusing to explain. But what happens, and it leads us into that next one. So again, if we're okay with where this is, the fire operations fund, by moving those operations out, which again, this line had $230,000 in it for every year pretty much since it was started. This right here, it can pay with, you know, with the way that looks is right there. I think we could, this was positive before. This 1 year had a deficit, it goes into negative. This is paying full cost for a fire truck in FY25 with no debt associated whatsoever. And that's the beauty, or the real powerful part of moving those operations out. This is what it allowed us to do. We have a actual funding mechanism for our fire department capital. In the public safety fund itself too, you see this has a fund balance of $835,000 projected for 10 years. And then the public safety fund, again, continues to grow. Even it comes down to the 380 after loaning out that money. It gets itself repaid. You can see that if we net those, sums zero, gets repaid all the money that it loaned out. And then ends up with a very heavy balance 10 years out as it's projected right now.
Darren, you said a figure 835,000. I'm looking on there, my eyeballs are just not seeing that number. Could you just point that number out to me?
Sure, it's right here. 835,000
Okay,
would be
thank you.
the savings
That's
account
it, thank you.
essentially. Yep.
My
Yep.
eyeball, my eyes wasn't catching that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right.
There are a couple of things that, from a policy perspective, what the council needs to be, one of the things you're looking at, and that's one of the things is what Darren has been talking about is the way you utilize these funds, and you use them to kind of leverage each other. That's policy. The policy of, yeah, we will essentially borrow from ourselves to do these things. Now, you can't always do that because the public safety fund is, a pumper truck is a eligible expense to use for the public safety fund. Okay, and so that enables that to happen. But by then allowing that then to get repaid, it keeps us closer to what we had, determined how we would be using that public safety. And then when you look at, so you're looking at kind of, are we using these funds appropriately for what they've been created for and what the voters enacted them for. And then the other thing that he talks about is the fact that you've got all of those purchases, and it seems like there's a lot of kind of in and out, but you're really still going to one place to see what are we doing and what's our plan. And that's that capital improvement plan. And that capital improvement fund. And part of the other reason you kind of want to look at that is that graph that he showed. When you can look at these kind of graphs and you can see the fund balances, kind of behind that, part of what that's telling you, this kind of graph in conjunction with your debt service graphs are going to tell you what you look like as you're moving forward. Because and it's like he was saying that all those various ways you can utilize debt, what you're trying to do is utilize them in such a way, in the smartest way. It's not to max out all your credit cards and all your loans, but it's to use them in such a way that you can continue to reinvest in these capital items without without ending up in a year where all of a sudden you can't buy anything. Or in a year where, so what you're doing then is you're working towards a solution in which when debt rolls off, you can bring in other debt. And so that you're working, some of the capital improvement plan and the capital improvement fund is one of those things where if you're really in serious financial problems, that's really one of the places where you're going to stop spending pretty quickly, right? And by kind of having this, looking out, making sure. So one of the things you should be looking at is, looking at these graphs, looking at how far out do we really have? How far out are we planning? Are there certain things that when you're looking at it, it's like, wait a minute, your capital improvement plan isn't worth anything if it doesn't reflect all of your capital purchases. So if we, if Darren didn't have in here the surveillance system for this building, not being in the capital plan doesn't mean it's not going to doesn't mean it doesn't need to be fixed. It just means it's an unexpected expense. So what you're really trying to do is plan ahead. And that is one way of budgeting. You can also, so sometimes you may be replacing, so you want to, and you'll see things as this goes. If you looked at where we were last year, you would see something different here, because you move things back and forth and you move things out. Technology changes that, those impact this. But from the policy perspective, really, that's what you want. You want to make sure that this is comprehensive, that it looks that your uses are appropriate, from the funds, and that and keep us on task for doing as much as possible, to have it adequately reflect what you want us to be doing. Now, one of the things you're going to notice in here, if you can scroll down just a little bit, Darren, there is something that we don't have in here, and that's the Price Road. When we anticipate going out for, it is in there, I'm sorry. You can see where that is, and thank you. I didn't see it. So we have that in here. Now we know probably realistically, we've already put it down into 2 phases. We're looking at FY 24. Realistically, to start construction and to start spending that money in FY 24, you're really looking at probably maybe applying in FY 2022. But what we're going to want to look at now, right, is we'll continue to watch how we're doing, because what happens is, you notice the street repair budgets dip down a little bit in those years when we have these other costs.
Yeah.
And so kind of from that policy perspective, those roads are the roads are important, and those, the ability to do, Price Road is our last road that qualifies for the STP funding. And the money's reflected here are 20% of that full cost. So, but anyway, so those are the kinds of things that this plan reminds you of.
Could I ask a question? If you could go back to the chart, the green chart. And I'm talking about the fund balance that is the behind the other colors of our revenue or expenditures. So right now our fund balance is looking up, it's got a lot of money in it. What are we at, fiscal 20? And by the time you get down to 30, it looks like we don't have much. And obviously because we're using it. So and I'll be long gone, but will there be the ability to bring back up the reserve that's in the capital improvement fund, or do we always want to leverage and keep it low as it's going to reflect in 10 years?
That's a really good kind of policy decision that if I remember right, we had decided that we weren't going to put a reserve amount on this. And so then we get our gut telling us too low, too high. And that was one of the reasons I would kind of explain, like, these are the projects that do make it, that draw down on it. And up to now, I think we've had our reasons why we've done these, to leverage these matching resources towards those grants. I think we all know that there's constant need for street repairs at various places. We're kind of committed to keeping these snow removal fleet items in here. And so it's a discussion we can definitely have if this graph is showing us and it's telling our gut, it makes it uncomfortable. That's something that a discussion we can definitely have. That's just like Barb said, that's policy if we need to put something in there.
May I make a suggestion perhaps that as we move towards our retreat time, that we sort of look at the retreat perhaps as an opportunity for us to look at this as a policy, perhaps look at some other policies as well. That's a time for us to really talk some of these through and and set them up. What is it that we want to do? I mean, I think Missy brings up a good point. And how do you counterbalance a lowering capital improvement fund, but balance that with getting other things done in the community? And so how do you establish a policy that sets a comfort level perhaps for everyone, or certainly, set some guidance for councils to look at that come after us? So I personally would like to do that if that's possible.
That's exactly what these kind of plantings and graphs are supposed to spur. So that's good news. The interesting thing, part of this is how, we have to project revenue. And I think this is about as bad as it gets. And we're in the middle of at least some sort of big downturn, and we still have a positive fund balance as we kind of project those things out. Now, are these things, these revenue projections, wrong, grossly wrong? I think that's if they are, then we have it's a different discussion what that graph looks like in the future. Do you have anything else before we kind of finalize where we're at with the fire trucks?
Anybody? Nope.
Right. Okay. All right. We we kind of had mentioned before, we are self-funding the proceeds for that fire truck. The cash will be provided by the public safety fund, the Prop P fund, and repaid by the fire operations fund. That's, again, self-funded, using our own cash to pay for our own item. There's pros and cons to that. Now, we need the appropriation for the fire truck for this year to make the contract. We need the appropriation for the delivery for next year. What we do between now and next May and June, and we'll be hopeful that they can finish it in 12 months. It seems to make it maybe longer. We will have a lot more clarity about what happens in the next 12 months than we will in the next 30 days. And so that leaves us, the final thing, the most important thing I would say there is we can change course for all this as the fire truck approaches delivery. And again, it's not likely to happen until the very end of this budget year we're talking about right now. In the way I see it, we have, well, 3 options. There's really only 2 with some thing in between, which we can remain where we're at now. We can self-fund that versus the public safety fund. Now, obviously, if like Mr. Card says, if the son goes and borrows the money from him, between the 2 of them, there's still only so much money. And just like with the city, between all the funds, there's only so much money. You're using your own cash, to do that. And that's a decision that you've made as a family or as a person or as a city or as a council that that's the way we're going to do that. So the pros are, there's very little regulation. There's no co-signing. There's no anything. There's also no interest associated with it because we're saying to ourselves, you're a zero risk. Son, you're a zero risk to me. I'm going to end up co-signing or bailing that out anyway if something goes south. We do have to part with the cash. That's the con there, but there's no interest. We can do a full lease purchase amount, which is essentially debt that it's essentially debt, but technically not. The lessee owns the title to the vehicle. That's their collateral for it during the time period. Not sure what bank would do with a fire truck with all of that written on the side of it, but those things can be changed. Now there is, that joke kind of leans into the fact that we're a pretty low risk as far as a lease purchase or to a bank is concerned, but at the same time there is some interest involved. So the con is you do have to pay some interest on those funds. But we get to keep our cash. We don't have to part with any of that cash up front. It gets spread out over whatever term you want. Last time we did it in 3 years. We can do it 3, 5, 7, any of those terms. Then the third option, which is kind of not really an option, but we don't have to do it. It would be a lease purchase, but not for the full amount. If we only want to make $200,000 payments, we pay. We make a down payment and only debt finance half of this. And that is part of that discussion of how comfortable are we paying interest? How comfortable really are we with decreasing these fund balances to different levels and these different, what they are, they're really funding tools, sources of money to pay for things. So that's the 3 things. So I would say we need the appropriation to purchase the fire truck, and that's a decision we don't have to make today. If you sign the contract or approve the contract in the next month or so, I would really like, it'd be really good to actually make the appropriation to pay for it. Otherwise, there's other troubles that Paul's going to give us somewhere down the road that somebody's going to give us. But at the same time, we still have options in the next to make the appropriation. I would suggest doing that. And we can see where we want to be with this debt situation in 12 months or so. But I want everyone to acknowledge the fact that we do have options. And there's a lot of stuff that's going to be being monitored over the next couple months as the focus narrows on what is actually happening right now. So that is my short 3 points that became long.
Does anybody have questions for Darren?
Darren, I like your long sometimes. It helps me learn, so don't worry.
Anybody
I
else?
enjoy talking about it, as sad as it is.
I think it's a very interesting conversation. I sense that, the city is in really good shape. The fact that we can self-fund a fire truck of that size it's great. I mean, I think all of those things are great. And, if we continue to manage things well, it will bode extremely well for the city. So, as I said, I think having a policy discussion is a really good thing. Policy discussion about money is always interesting to me. So, anybody else?
Well, as always, I just love when he brings it down to layman's terms because it's so much easier to understand.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Like a
Darren.
rabbit hole to me.
Thank you,
The more you
Darren.
look into it, the deeper it goes.
I'll just say thank you for a good job as always.
All right.
Sydney, this is kind of like being at home. At the end of the day, we'll still be trying to ask you to fund it.
I can't see Sydney because you changed up the view. Did he laugh?
Is that
There we
better?
go.
You turned off your light, Sydney.
Once the sun goes down, there's no more light coming in from the front window. I'm in the west wing of the house.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, if there are no other comments or questions, I'm assuming that, will we see the first reading next city council meeting or not till June?
We'll have another work session on it, so we get to do the whole thing again, a little bit better. It'd be the final product, more or less, not the budget document, but you'll see the full everything that goes into all of these different departments, and it'll be the kind of final thing. We'll get all these things kind of printed out or in Excel to look over.
So
Will we have a workshop on the 2nd because it's election day and we may need to be celebrating?
That's happened before. It does shorten the budget discussions. I think everyone just acts like they fall asleep a little bit earlier there, and then like.
Darren and Barb, Darren and Barb, if I could follow up on a question that I had sent to Barb, and maybe I misunderstood. Last time you had highlighted items in yellow in our budget discussion, and I was under the impression that everything in that document was being considered postponed, because I thought that document just identified the 75,000 and some other things, and I was mistaken. You don't have that. You don't have that, do you, Darren? That page that I was referencing. I didn't do a photo shoot.
The sheet you're talking about is one we use for our forecasting, and we have always. I had put some scenarios down there. I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Can
those.
I interrupt a minute?
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know about anybody else, but I have no idea what the question was. I don't know what we're talking about. And I think for everybody's benefit, it'd be good probably because maybe somebody else has that same question.
I can. But the question is, when we last got together, we were going over some working documents is to talk about possible what the reductions and some of those. We also had a memo in which I had highlighted those documents, but because it was a working document, the spreadsheet that Darren was using, it gets overridden because as we update things, and
right.
So we don't have that.
And what I was asking about was and when the answer came, we don't have that anymore, and I would have a misunderstanding. I thought everything on that working document in yellow were all going away. So I asked, what was in yellow? Would it be going away if we're putting in the 5%? And that's when they came back to me and said, you misunderstood that document.
And I'm happy to bring up the memo when we talked about the various reductions. We talked about not hiring the assistant court clerk, a variety of different things. The medical deductible. Those reductions have all been made.
Okay.
Those have been reduced from the budget.
Okay.
It didn't, and that was to get us to minimize so that we had to use a small amount of our reserve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, then we will do this again on June 2nd, right? Okay, perfect. Next item.
Item number 9, hearing from citizens.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council?
We're down to 2.
If anyone is interested, they can either write the question in the Q&A or a chat or raise their hand. Mayor, I don't see anyone.
I don't see anyone.
Doing the budget, it's the quickest way to chase people away.
That's just mean. I don't see anyone asking to speak before the council, so we're going to move on to the next item, please.
Item number 10, review and approval of minutes.
Council, is there anything that you saw that needs to be changed, amended? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from our last meeting on, was it April? April 28th.
Do I have a second?
2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Please poll the council.
Councilmember Weil,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes.
Chairman Clark,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. Next item.
Item number 11, city attorney report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to report on the status of the lawsuit challenging Section 115.646 of the revised Missouri statutes. This is the public speech case we've been talking about for several months now. One of my last reports had to do with basically putting this on a shelf until we found out if the legislature was going to be amending this statute. With COVID especially, it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. And this case is now set for a June 1 status conference per the judge's order because she wanted to make sure that the legislature wasn't going to act, and we'll know that definitively by then. But in light of the fact that it seems very, very remote that there'll be any changes, I went ahead and started preparing affidavits to support our motion for summary judgment. And what the affidavits do is go through essentially and establish the allegations in our petition and help to describe for the court exactly what the problems are with the statute, especially as on a very basic local government level. These are the problems that we have with these particular statutes. So I prepared an affidavit for both Ruth and Missy, and I've asked for some
Very cool.
comment. And I know you've got a little bit going on, so and I meant it. I don't need it right away. Missy has responded, and I appreciate that, Missy. I am going to go ahead and expand these affidavits. They're basically templates for the other individual plaintiffs that we have in this lawsuit. And I'll be preparing those over the next few days. And it is my hope that we can get a motion for summary judgment prepared and filed by June 1st, although that's a little bit ambitious. We'll see what happens, but that's the goal. And it occurred to me today that another reason why this is important, and especially for a city like Rock Hill, which is a plaintiff, Rock Hill does not have a use tax. They didn't pass a use tax ordinance. They wanted to wait to see what would happen with the legislature. And the Wayfair legislation is obviously pending and will probably be addressed at some point this year. Not sure if it's going to be before the session ends or in a special session. But they're concerned about that and want to make sure that they're able to talk about that without being hung up on the restrictions presented by that particular statute. So that's where we are in the case. We are finally moving, and we'll get on it, and I'll keep you advised. Other than that, I don't have any report requiring any confidential communications. If anybody else would like to have a discussion about anything.
Paul, I want to follow up on a couple of things you just shared. When you said you were going to be expanding the affidavits, are you referring to expanding our affidavits, mine and Ruth's, or expanding and providing affidavits from the other municipalities? That's one question, sir.
Really kind of both. I'm using
Okay.
yours and Ruth's affidavit as a template
Okay.
to prepare for the other cities.
Okay.
Now, the other cities are statutory cities, so there's going to be some changes,
Okay.
but the essence of the message is still going to be the same.
Okay. Paul, I'm showing in our system with City of Olivet that we're showing court date as of May 27. You identified a June 1st court date. And I'm curious as to, and I've not received anything from my legal services at this point reflecting courts have identified a date to be open. Not that there isn't, but have they identified courts are going to reopen yet and said it's going to be before May 27th?
I'm not aware of
Yeah.
any opening
Yeah.
for courts right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, me neither. Okay, go ahead.
There are a couple things. One is that the presiding judge
Can't hear you, gotta.
the presiding judge has put out requirements for masks and for people coming into the courtroom. So that's one thing. They've also, the presiding judge has asked municipal courts to complete their plan for what it would look like when they open up. And my recollection was that I didn't think that when the presiding judge closed the municipal courts, I thought that was to a date certain, which I think is prior to the 28th. So they would have to extend that date of being closed.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Paul. That's it.
We are fully prepared that we may have court on May 28th.
Okay.
We're not happy about it, but we're prepared.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
We do need a closed session, Paul, for client attorney privilege.
Very good. 610-021.1.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Please poll the council.
You're muted, Denise.
You're muted, Denise.
There you go.
Councilmember Weil,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes.
Chairman Clark,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed.